I used to work in a domestic abuse service, and I had a lot of experience kind of just seeing what women were going through and what little resource or support there was available at the government level. So it's one of those things where you just see a problem right in front of you and you think, well, no one's doing anything about it. So what can we do?
You got two UK press regulators to update their reporting guidance for journalists on how to report on domestic abuse and domestic homicide. Can you tell me why it was important to make those changes?
So in the UK, 2 women a week are murdered by a partner or ex-partner. Now, when somebody kills their partner, it is usually the end point to a sustained period of coercive control. And the problem is that, these crimes are so frequent, but the way the press reports them is as though it's a freak accident, it came out of the blue, no one could have seen it coming. And ultimately, this just isn't helpful to our kind of public health understandings of why people kill their partners and how we can prevent this. So, a really good example on how to report sensitively around death is the suicide guidance that the Samaritans have. And every single journalist knows that when it comes to reporting a suicide, they have to be really, really careful because it has public health consequences. So what Level Up have set out to do is effectively do the same thing for fatal domestic abuse. So every time a journalist sees that someone's killed their partner or ex-partner, they know they have to report it sensitively, because not only does it have a huge traumatic impact on the family, but it has a massive impact on how we understand the phenomenon of domestic abuse in the UK. And ultimately, if we can start changing the way that we talk about fatal domestic abuse, we can stop it happening and we can stop more women dying.
What was it like trying to draw attention to this when you first started? What was the sort of inkling of the beginning of the campaign, and what kind of challenges did you face when you started campaigning on it?
I used to work in a domestic abuse service, and I had a lot of experience kind of just seeing what women were going through and what little resource or support there was available at the government level. So it's one of those things where you just see a problem right in front of you and you think, well, no one's doing anything about it. So what can we do? And the campaign was running for a long while behind the scenes before we went public, because we were building a coalition of victims' families, of academics, of specialists in domestic abuse, and also of journalists, because, I wanted to understand why there wasn't any guidance on this and what training was available on this. And it turns out there isn't any training on domestic abuse. There's no training on fatal domestic abuse. And so what it was is a project that really brought together a huge coalition of people who all want to change in the same place. And what was really incredible actually is, as a campaigner, I'm very used to a lot of resistance. You're asking for something and people think, oh no, why is that so important? But actually, there was very little resistance when it came to this, because people were quite grateful to have a tool, to have some guidance, and were really actually quite shocked at how predictable fatal domestic abuse is. And some of the basic requests that we came up with, what families told us, which is, don't use images of the perpetrator. Please put a helpline number at the end. So easy for journalists to implement and have such a huge impact on families that it was actually a pretty straightforward ask. But the issue is just getting in front of journalists and getting their time, because they're incredibly busy. The news cycle is very, very fast, and there's a lot of different people making decisions in the newsroom. So the cultural change in newsrooms is the longer standing piece of work. But when we started talking about this, we heard from a lot of people who had either lost family members, lost friends, who had experienced domestic abuse themselves. And there was this huge kind of swell of people who were just so pleased to see the way this being reported being changed, because they were so pissed off with how bad the reporting is. And actually, there are so many people out there who have had horrific experiences, who, when they see cases like this in the press, just feel so despairing at how poorly it's understood. So I feel like there was a lot of support, there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of relief, and there was also just a lot of energy to really propel this campaign forward.
Looking forward, what would your vision be for the future?
I think we're living through a really politically active time. And I think in the next few years, I would love to see more people going out on the streets protesting, more people kind of embedding activism and community into their lives, more people really just questioning the world that we live in and why it is the way it is, and actually realizing it doesn't have to be this way. I think more of an abandonment of the systemic status quo, and a lot of kind of recognizing that it's in our power to do everything we can to change it.